At least one member of the media had a problem with a massive prayer meeting this weekend in Houston. Texas Governor Rick Perry invited people from across the country to come to the event called The Response. More than 30,000 people came to answer the call to pray for the country and its leaders. But a writer for the New York Times admits he doesn't get it. Former restaurant critic Frank Bruni wrote in an op-ed piece for the Times, quote, seeking relief from the country's woes through a louder, more ardent appeal to God strikes us as too much hope invested in too magical a solution. It suspends disbelief and defies rigorous reason. Well, one person who strongly disagrees with Frank Bruni's assessment is Jordan Sekulow. He's the Director of Policy and International Operations at the American Center for Law and Justice. And Jordan, you wrote a response to Bruni's article on today's Washington Post website. Why did you find it important to respond to his article?
You know, more and more we're seeing this encroaching attack on the basic tenets of faith. For Christians specifically, usually we're the target, but really for all religious people. Prayer, faith, being totally degraded by mainstream media in these opinion columns. I mean, a guy who was a former restaurant critic gets half a page in the New York Times Sunday edition, which is the #1 newspaper going out to the country, to attack prayer without even understanding what prayer is. The closing of his article, which I usually don't do this, but I think you have to read the words slowly so people understand it. This is not an expert on religion or politics. He said, faith and prayer just won't cut it. In fact, they'll get in the way when it comes to our country's problems. He acts as if this prayer event that Rick Perry and the Response had this weekend in Texas, which was very successful, that this is just Christians coming together, that they pray and they just sit down and say, okay, as he said, they're waiting for magic to happen. What he forgets is that, faith without works is dead, that those Christians are the grassroots, they vote, right. They are engaged in politics, they're engaged in policy. And you know what, we cannot let these kind of attacks on the basics of our faith go by.
Well, as believers, we know what the Bible says, that the prayers of the righteous availeth much. It commands us to pray for our leaders that it might go well with us. So Bruni calls, as you mentioned, this was just a waste of time and it doesn't do anything. Doesn't his article tell us a lot about the way the media sees evangelicals, and especially the media that's unbelieving?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two things. One, they do think we're an entire waste of time. The second part, he says it doesn't make any sense with reason. That's a fancy way of saying he thinks we're dumb. He thinks that we're not smart people, we're not as intelligent as him. And then the third part, which he kind of hints at in this but doesn't really want to admit, is that it's not that prayer isn't working. It's working, it's just not working the way he wants it to. Prayer's the solution for us. For him, that means policies that he doesn't agree with. So they don't understand necessarily the relationship we have with God, with Jesus, with prayer, with our active faith and how we believe. But they do understand that we are a powerful force. Christians in government, Christians in America, in society, are probably the single most organized grassroots political force, which he admits in this article, and then acts like we just sit back, pray for God for a miracle to happen and do nothing else. Yes, we believe in divine intervention and we should defend that. But at the same time, we know that the Bible tells us we have to engage culture battles. We've been given rights here in the United States of America, just like every other citizen. And I think it's our biblical responsibility to utilize every one of those rights, including the political rights, to make sure our message gets across and we can elect people that we believe in, that we trust as our leaders.
Jordan Sekulow, thanks so much for your insights.
Thank you.